Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about the changes that we have made in Justinmind. I'm Victor Conesa, one of the product managers here in Justinmind. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning. We have people all around the world, so in any place that you are, welcome to the webinar. Just a piece of advice. You guys are in listen only mode, but please feel free to leave any kind of questions that you may have regarding this version or any version or anything related to the product or even the company. And to do that, you have like a panel in the right side. And there should be there a place where you can leave your questions. Just I will keep reminding you guys about that along the webinar. So please feel free to leave any kind of questions there. Um, so this webinar is just an overview, a quick overview of the last update that we launched last week, and we're going to go through the main features and changes that we have included in this version. But feel free to ask or to suggest if you guys want me to show some specific feature or you want me to expand in any of the topics that we're going to cover today. We're going to leave some time at the very end of the webinar for Q&A, and we'll use that time to address any kind of questions that you guys have asked and any other topics that might be interesting for you guys. So the main changes that we have included in this last update are listed right now in front of you. So it's mainly the CSS view that we will see how that can be used and why we have included that option in the product. What is the motivation behind that thing being there? We'll see that now you guys are able to add comments to scenarios using the server as well. So far, the only place to add comments, either if it was you or one of the reviewers that you have invited to a prototype, was to add the comments on the screens and on elements in the screens. But it was kind of a limitation that you are able to share the scenarios, but nobody was able actually to give you feedback on those scenarios. Well, we have just enabled that option for the simulation as well. We have also enabled an option that might be small, but it's very powerful, and it's the option to select more than one target uh, in the events dialog. So I'm pretty sure you guys have had the need of this kind of option before, and we are going to illustrate the use of this new feature with one example. As we have also enhanced the selection in that same dialog, and now you are also able to select elements that are in the templates. If you remember, and if you use templates, you will see that there is no way to communicate events or interactions from screens to templates. So in some cases, there are some workarounds using variables. They work, but they are not like the best option. So now with this option, we hope that everything will be easier and faster. And also, we have included two like small options that will make your communication with the developers even easier. One is the option to extract any kind of image asset that you have in a prototype into an image file. So if someone shares a prototype with you, even if you don't have the files that that person used to build the prototype, you will be able to extract those visual assets in order to reuse them in production or in any other way. The same for checking the hex code for any kind of color without having to do clicks and so. So we're going to go through all of these different bullets here, and we will be jumping back and forth from the presentation to the actual product. Again, I want to remind you guys that if you want to ask anything, you can leave your questions using that right sidebar. Okay, the first feature that we're going to show here is the new CSS palette. So that palette is available. If it's not showing up by default, you can display that palette using the view menu and just selecting CSS. This palette is a read-only mode kind of palette. So it's not something that you can use to change any kind of property, but it's a very handy way to check the style properties in a format that is easy to understand, especially for a developer. So what we are doing with this feature and some of the other features that we are going to showcase today is to pave the way for developers to be able to consume your prototypes in a more convenient way. Right. So with this CSS option, any kind of person can select anything in the interface and check the CSS properties. If you want to create your own style guide or things of that nature, you can use these CSS options and just extract that information in this format in a document that you may have. So if you feel like, okay, this is the style, this element has the style property or the style definition of the text, of the basic text that I have in my prototype. Well, if you want to have that and create that kind of style guide to send it over to your developers, well, just select that option, click the copy CSS option, and just paste it in any kind of document that you may have. But once you have it extracted from Justinmind, you can do with that whatever you want, of course. There is still always the option of exporting the whole prototype into an HTML file, an HTML folder with HTML5 and JavaScript and CSS and so on. But if you just need the style of some specific component, you can use this very convenient palette. There might be plans for making this view to habilitate this view to actually change the values from here for sure. Now that it's there, I mean, turning this into something that is editable is not uh, that difficult. So for sure, that's going to be something available at some point in the future. Let us know, please, how much you want to do that. How much you feel that it would be easier for you guys to edit the options with this CSS format, or the properties panel is enough for you. Okay, so that's basically it. So very simple option here. The other feature that we have included is the option to add comments to scenarios. And in the last, in version 7.7, we have enhanced and we have started to enhance the scenario section. You will see in the future this section evolving and into something that will be very similar to product other diagramming products like Visio and so on. We're doing that in an agile way, so you will see like little improvements from version to version to this section till it actually resembles in terms of features all the power that you already have with diagrams. The goal of improving the scenario section is to provide you guys with another way to express and to illustrate and visualize the different softwares that that you're designing. So we completely understand that sometimes some processes they're just better explained with diagrams. So that's why we're putting um, a little bit of effort evolving this section here. So since version 7.7, we have included the image option that allows you to add any kind of image into the prototypes, allowing you to even express in diagrams things that are more than just navigation flows. Right? So if you want to define something using BPMN, business process modeling, or UML or things like that, you can just use combinations of rectangles formatted in the right way and images to create your process, and also take advantage of the actual features that are available in the scenarios, like being able to reuse the existing screens that you have, and and also use the simulation engine that comes with it. So because of that, um, because of improving this section, we realized that the comments section was, well, a little bit limiting, right? So you could actually add comments already with your Justinmind to the scenarios that's there. They were good for generating documents and so on. But sadly, you weren't able to see those comments, nor changing those comments or even adding more comments on the simulation engine. Well, now with version 7.8, you can do that as well. So if we go, we will see that the option of adding comments is also available in our scenario section, right? So if you see in a scenario and you want to add a comment, you just need to habilitate and enable the comments mode, add a comment, and the comment will be linked to that scenario. So the same way you can add comments, other reviewers can also add comments to the scenarios. So you can even bring the reviewing process earlier in the software process by defining scenarios, sharing those scenarios, getting feedback from those scenarios, and then once everything has been validated and verified, you can move on to the specific content and interactions of each of the screens involved in that kind of scenario, and then just go on with the revision process. The same way you can also synchronize with the comments that you have in the screens. You can also synchronize with the comments that you have in the scenario by just clicking share, refresh comments, and you will be able to bring back all the different comments from all the sections in the prototype. So now if we go to check the comments section, we will see that this new comment that was created online on the server on top of the scenario. And the same way we can trace the comments to the different screens, we can do the same for the comments that we or any reviewer adds to those scenarios. So we can just right click on it and say, okay, show me which is the scenario that this comment is talking about. Okay. Again, we're going to keep adding more functionality to these scenarios. So let us know what do you want to see? What options do you want to see in these scenarios? I want to remind you that you guys have this palette or section at the right side of your computer from GoToWebinar where you can leave any kind of questions or suggestions or anything that you just want to say. If you want just to praise how good we are or just want to blame us for any of your troubles, please feel free to do that. Okay, the next feature that I want to show you guys is the option to select more than one target in the events dialog. If you guys remember, once you create an event and you want to use one of the actions, like for instance, change style, that affects more than one component in a screen, well, before there was the limitation of selecting just one element. So it could be very time consuming if you want to interact with many elements at the same time to create every action one by one. Needless to say that maintaining all the changes in those actions also might be really time consuming. So let's illustrate this with an example. So let's say that we have this dialog here, right? And we want to create an interaction that says when the user clicks on this button, I'm going to change the border of these input fields to illustrate some kind of error message there, right? Okay, so let's create that event. In previous versions, we would need to create, okay, let's one event that is on click, change the style of this input here. And then we would click OK, and then we would add another action for this element here and hit OK, and so on and so forth for all the different input fields. Again, that might be time consuming, not just creating those kind of interactions, but also maintaining those interactions. So if you want to change the color, you will have to do that for each of the actions, right? So now if you check this text, it says here that you can actually use multiple select option. So just by holding the command key or control key if you're using Windows, you can select more than one component as the target for an event. Okay, so now with just one click, we can interact, one click or any other trigger, of course, we can interact with more than one element in this screen. As you see, that has created just one single action. And if we click on it, we can see that it's acting over these 4 fields here. right? Don't know if you know this, but you can also change the way that the events are displayed. So if we change the view, we can see the whole description of this action, and we can see that it's changing more than one element at once, right? So if at any point we want to change the color, for instance, to a different color, just need to do that once. Just need to act on that action once, and we have it there. I'm pretty sure you guys will think about other cases that you might have um, encounter on your prototyping process, where you will see this option being useful. But just keep in mind that it's there, and it will save you a ton of time, and also it will make your prototypes easier to manage and easier to share with other people. The less the less events or the more contents events that you have, the easier it gets to manage all of this. Also, keep in mind that this same description will be in the document generation thing, so that or creating events this way might make your documents even more content. Another improvement that we have included in the events definition is the option to interact with elements that are in the template. Uh, let's let's uh, let's just put an example here. So let's assume that we are in this prototype, and in this prototype we have a template. The template has all the common navigation. So when we click in About Us, we go to the About Us screen. When we click on the home screen, we go to the home screen. So nothing special there. But what we like to do is to highlight the option that has been selected depending on the screen that we are. The trick till now was to create a copy of that same element, so the home text, change its style, and paste it in the screen. So that pasted text will overlap the the element that is in the template. Sorry guys, if you guys hear me like stopping in the webinar, is because I'm reading the questions that you guys are putting on the right panel. Um, so because now you can also interact with elements that are in the template, what we could do is a different way. We can think in a different way and say, okay, and now I can change anything that is in the template from the screen. So what we could do in this case is to say, okay, if I'm in the home screen, I want to change the color of this home text that is located in the template. So what I can do now is to describe that event. So we could say on page load, we're going to change the style properties of this element that is in the screen. And in this case, we're going to change the text color. So let's do the same kind of event. Let's create that same event on the About Us screen. On page load, change the style, of the About Us text, we're going to paint that in blue. Okay. So now this is what we have. Okay, so far there is no much benefit in this specific case for that event. But keep in mind that now we just have one element that we are interacting to. So if we want to change that element, we don't actually need to go back to every screen and change that overlapping selected element on each of the screens. So if I want to change that home text and say, okay, if we want to change that text, we can change it in the template without having to change any element that we may have in the screen. Right? The same applies for hiding and showing components. If it's like, for instance, in this, we could say when we get to About Us, we want to, or when we click on this image, let's say, we want to change the image that it's this banner image that is in the template for a different image. So using that option, we can actually customize or do specific or change specific content, uh, change content in the template depending on the screen that we have. Right, so all those exceptions, all that different content, and again, that applies to any kind of event and action. So set values or moving things around, or changing colors, or resizing things, anything. You can interact with anything that you have in the template from the screen. So all those special situations, all those exceptions that you may have for different screens, now they can be defined with events instead of just recreating some content on top of it, or just doing different screens and so on and so forth. Right. Again, I'm pretty sure that you guys will find even more cases in your prototyping where this is going to be useful. So just keep in mind that that's there, right? Another option, again, paving the way to let the developers use or consume the prototypes, is the option from the properties panel to actually save any image file, right? So if you actually want to have this this file, this image file from here, just select it, go to the properties option, and hit this kind of download kind of button, and that will extract that image file from the prototype to any place that you may have or that you may want to. Right. So let's say that you are using Teamwork, for instance, right? So that image file was put in the prototype by another person in your team, and you use this prototype. You're checking out, and you actually want to get this image file to send it to one of your developers, for instance. Of course, you have two ways of doing that. Just trying to reach the person who actually created this prototype, or that he included that image there, and kindly ask him for the file. He might have it, maybe not. Maybe he lost it. Who knows? So don't worry, because now you have always the option to extract any image file from the prototype, and retaining the original name of the file as well, which could be really cool. If you want to extract all the images from a prototype, you always have this export to HTML option here, that by clicking on it, again, it will extract. Let's do that so I can show it to you. That has always been there, by the way. This is not new. But this export to HTML option, it extracts everything in a folder, and if you want to see all the image files that might be in a prototype, um, you will have them all in this images folder here, right? The only difference is the names. So if you extract them with this HTML generation thing, you will have these really strange names. If you use this option, it will actually retain the name of the image that you used. And also, if you have any color picker, either in the toolbar or in the properties panel, so if you want to check the code of a color or any specific thing that you may have in the prototype, now by just leaving the mouse over any color picker component, you will see the hex code, and it's just an easier way to communicate that. So what we are doing with this tiny little improvement, CSS, downloading these image assets and so on, is to progressively make it easier to cover one case that many of you guys have asked us, and is, okay, once we have a prototype that has been reviewed and validated, how do we send that to the developers? What do we send to them? It's okay, we have the simulation, that's good. We can even attach requirements to that simulation. That's very helpful. There is the export to document option. Okay. But how we can make sure, or how the developers can make sure to match your design exactly the way you design it, right? So these developers at some point will have questions like, hey, where's this icon? Can you send me this icon, please? I want the exact same kind of file. Or what's the color of this text? What's the position of this element? What are the style properties of this? Well, those are tiny improvements, and you will see more in that direction in the next versions. We're trying to make Justinmind uh, as a platform where different profiles in your company will be able to interact with. So stay tuned for the next updates, because there's going to be things moving in that direction as well. There are minor like bug fixes and so on that you can check on the blog, on the post that we made in our blog. Um, you can check them there if you have questions. There was a huge issue in the last version that we launched regarding activations. That has been fixed. Um, if at any point the application says something like, "Oh, you have the product activated in too many computers," something like that, just reach to us. There is a quick fix that we may need to do, um, but it's just a one-time thing that we have to do for your specific installation, and that's gonna be it. You shouldn't happening shouldn't be happening anymore. Um, okay, so that's it. That's those are the new features in this version. And just let us know if you have any feedback, if you want to see some specific things in the application, or if you want us to cover some specific feature or so on. Just let us know. We're going to do this kind of overviews every time we launch a version, so you will have plenty of opportunities to interact with us and giving us feedback or making suggestions for us. Um, okay, so let's try to address some of the questions that uh, you guys may be having. Yeah, this version is so the server is still compatible with previous versions, so you don't actually need to upgrade to be able to use the cloud server. Some of you guys may have an on-site server, so like the server installed behind your own firewall. If that's the case, make sure to upgrade the whole thing together. So make sure to upgrade the server first, and then your clients, your Justinmind installations, and not the other way around. So Justinmind is always backwards compatible, but not the other way around. So if you install version 7.8 and you have a server installed behind your firewall that was installed for version, I don't know, 7.5, that will not work. Okay? You will always need to have um, the latest version or the same version both for the server installed behind your firewall and uh, and the client that you have installed. Um, yeah, this version is included if you have a subscription, either if it's a monthly subscription or annual subscription. Uh, you don't need to pay anything else. You will have this version already included. For those of you that have perpetual licenses, well, you will have this included depending if you are keeping up with the renewals. Um, but if it's the first year of purchasing Justinmind, you will have this version available for free completely. Um, yeah, so let's wrap up. We will answer any of the other questions that you guys have left in by email. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. And feel free to let us know and give us any kind of feedback that you may have for the product or for anything that you may find useful. See you guys in the next webinar. Have a nice one.